Welcome to Water Talk with Paul the Waterman, brought to you by Water Pros. Paul the Waterman is Colorado's expert on all things related to the water we use and drink in our homes. Have you ever thought about where your water actually comes from? Is it safe to drink? Is it harmful to my health, my skin, my hair? Paul the Waterman knows water, and he has the answers. Haystack Help Radio proudly presents Water Talk. Now here's your host, Scott Watley, and owner of Water Pros, Paul the Waterman.
Old Ann and I, with throats burned dry and souls that cry for water. Water, cool water, clear water, water.
Hello, mother. Hello, father. Here I am at Camp Granada. Camp is very entertaining, and they say we'll have some fun if it stops raining. I went hiking with Joe Spike.
Welcome to Water Talk on Haystack Help Radio. This is Paul the Waterman. Scott, our host, is busy on assignment, so I'm going to be with you for the next hour, and we're going to bring a special guest on. We have Mark Whitlock with us, and Mark is operator at a wastewater treatment plant. So he does both ends. He does the providing of water to these customers. He also does the treating of wastewater. And so, Mark, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
So, Mark, let's give everybody in the Haystack listening audience kind of a recap of what you and I have kind of discussed on our time on the radio. And one of the things that you sent me last week that I wanted to kind of start out with is the amount of sludge or biosolids, which is human waste. People need to understand, exactly, how much that could be, why we have to get rid of it, and also the fact that a lot of that, waste is also, coated with contaminants that, what a water treatment plant can filter out, what they can't. So, Mark, take over and appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Paul, it's always a pleasure to get on the radio with you and to spread the word and awareness. And I think that was one of the first things that intrigued me about you. I had been listening to you, just for kind of a background for the new listeners out there. I've been listening to you for several months, and I was really intrigued about your ethical approach when it comes to taking care of water. You had a lot of, I could tell you had done a lot of research, and I cross-checked you on a lot of things you had said, and you were accurate on a lot of the concerns that are coming up with the water and the conditions of our water and wastewater are changing. I've been in this field for approximately about 15 years. I have my top license in the state of Colorado, which is an A license for water and an A license for wastewater. And I think, after listening to your show for a while, when you started exploring kind of the biosolids side of things and the effects of biosolids to the land and how it affects other people is when I started reaching out to you, and I said, "Hey, Paul, I think we need to talk." On my background, and again, this is kind of for the new listeners, but every day a wastewater treatment plant has to produce a certain amount of biosolids, and the biosolids is just the leftover product of the extra bacteria that is in bugs, what we call that, is produced. In a wastewater treatment plant, a certain level of biosolids has to be maintained. We don't want to have too much or too little, and that's what's called in the form of mixed liquor. And we have too much, it creates a imbalance in the biological activity. And if we have too little, it creates an imbalance in the biological activity as well. So what we have to do is just to maintain a ratio between the food that's coming in and the biology that's remaining inside the wastewater treatment plant. We have to pull off a certain amount of biosolids each day. Now, for a very long time, and it's still still being done, and the greater percentage of the biosolids is removed from wastewater treatment plants is distributed out in the form of what's called land application. Now, for a very long time, farmers who have been very welcome to have that the biosolids or sludge delivered to their land because it's a cheap form of nitrogen and phosphorus.
And what that means, Mark, what that means is, folks, is it's basically free fertilizer for the farmland. So,
food for the plants.
That's right. So it's used to grow hay, crops, so that's what Mark means there. Go ahead, Mark.
And this has been going on for decades, and really during the formation of the EPA in 1971, the EPA set a set of guidelines on the quality of the sludge. And so it has to pass a certain amount of tests. One is called vector attraction. I don't want to get too complicated here, but it's one called vector attraction. That's the quality of, if there's too much bad bacteria in the sludge, it can create attraction of flies. The other quality is that it has to test is just heavy metals, which is concerned. You don't want to fill your soil up with heavy metals. And so the EPA is like, hey, this is put in different forms of biosolids A being the best, and the biosolids B going down being less quality in it. And then based upon the level of the quality of the biosolids, then that can be directly land applied or indirectly land applied and mixing it up in the form of compost. And so, the farmers are like, hey, we've been receiving these biosolids. It's a biosolids A. It's past its vector attraction levels. It's below its vector attraction levels, and it's below its inorganic heavy metals levels. It's good to go. It's safe. But now with the growing knowledge of emerging contaminants, the EPA is going back and testing these soils. And Paul, you shared some really good videos on it, going back and testing these soils, and they're like, oh my goodness, we are now looking for emerging contaminants, and based upon that, your soil is so contaminated, we no longer can use it.
Right, and when he's talking about contamination, folks, is what Scott and I have been talking about for a couple of years now, is the PFAS, forever chemicals, PFAs, PFOs. And we shared what has happened is farmland has gotten to the point with the PFAS contamination, it can no longer be used, where the EPA is come into a family farm and shut it down. Dairy farms. And then there was a cattle farm in Texas where, the whole farm became contaminated because of the PFAS level in the biosolids that was provided to the farmer from a waste treatment plant. And Mark, to my knowledge, are they testing for the forever chemicals in the biosolids waste?
Yes, it's right now. There's been a lot of information. It seems like it's the word PFAS, which is kind of a foreign word just a couple of years ago, is becoming more and more familiar with the public. And so right now the CDPHE, which is under Colorado Department of Health and Environment, which is under the EPA, is doing what's a interim strategy on PFAS. Now, this is just a data gathering information on a collection of all the wastewater treatment plants in the nation and finding out what their background levels of PFAS is in their biosolids. And then from that, then they can start setting up some rules and regulations on limitations of what the PFAS can be in the biosolids before it leaves the wastewater treatment plant.
So basically, it's kind of like an unregulated contaminant with the EPA. It's something that's going to be studied, and there's nothing that has been developed yet.
Yeah, and so, we've talked about the unregulated contaminant. Unregulated contaminant is something that they know that's out there. They know they have some information on maybe what's the maximum contaminant levels, MCL, but they haven't put it in a regulatory state to where a wastewater treatment plant has to follow. So we are, with the PFAS, it's even before that step right now. It kind of categorized in the emerging contaminants. We're like, okay, we know this is an emerging contaminant. Not meaning emerging that it's new, emerging that we know that for the very first time it's out there. And really it's because of the technology. It's much easier to test for PFAS than it has been for a couple of years ago, that they can put this in as like, now we can say that it's out there. We can say out there we are now aware of it. Now it's becoming emerging now, meaning we becoming more aware of it. And now next step would be put it on an unregulated contaminant down the road.
So what this means, ladies and gentlemen, is if you have waste, biosolids, which is human waste, and we're spreading it on the farmland, not only can we contaminate the crops and the livestock, but we're eventually going to put all that PFAS right back into the water supply. So when it rains, those forever chemicals are going to get absorbed through the ground and go right back to the aquifer. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle in a way.
Go ahead, Paul, I didn't interrupt, but there's two routes of contamination. One would be a direct route of groundwater contamination, surface water contamination. If this gets applied on a field, and if there's a rain event, that will wash into the surface waters, the streams and rivers. And then there's more of a direct contamination that, yes, this can seep into the shallower aquifers. There's an indirect contamination, and that indirect contamination is like, okay, it gets applied, it goes in the crops, the cows eat the crops, the PFAS gets in the cows, and then we eat the meat, and the PFAS gets in our bodies.
So, Mark, when we're going to get ready to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the next phase in what you do, and that's the water treatment, or providing, clean, safe drinking water, and exactly what type of filtration you can do, and what we need to get for the consumer, which is basically their responsibility to provide themselves with good, clean, quality drinking water. And then we're also going to get into commercial reverse osmosis. So this is Water Talk and Haystack Help Radio. We'll be right back.
How much do you need to lower your monthly mortgage payment? $200, $300, $400 or more? As rates decline, take AIM, Affordable Interest Mortgage, 720-895-0500. Over 24 years of saving Coloradans money. Low rates, lower payments, less costs. What makes us different is we listen. As an independent mortgage broker, we shop the top lenders to save you the most. Affordable Interest Mortgage, 720-895-0500. Want to purchase your next home? You can't qualify unless you sell your current home? Let us show you how to get the down payment out of your current home, qualify for the new one, and then sell yours for the most. Affordable Interest Mortgage, 720-895-0500. So you want to buy a home. Let us show you loans that can save you money, low down payment, first-time home buyer specials, fixed rates in the 4s with buy-downs. Call for details, 720-895-0500, or apply now at aimortgage.net. That's Affordable Interest Mortgage, where it's all about you. Regulated by DORA and MLS 217147, Equal Credit Lender.
Ready to clear out your gear closet? Head to the Outdoorsman's Attic, Colorado's largest consignment store for hunting, fishing, and camping gear. Located at 2650 West Hampton in Sheridan, they'll help you turn your used gear into cash. Save big right now. Tents and sleeping bags are up to 30% off. Footwear that's over 90 days old is 40% off, and clothing up to 50% off. Need firearm cleaning or repair? See Scott the Gunsmith and tell him Sportsman of Colorado sent you. It's the Outdoorsman's Attic. Save big now.
560 KLZ, your home station.
Welcome back to Water Talk and Haystack Help Radio. I'm Paul the Waterman, sitting in, going solo because our host Scott Watley is on assignment, and we have Mark Whitlock with us. And Mark, so now let's switch gears and talk about the water treatment side of your job, and let people know what the main goal is as far as the quality of water that you guys want to provide them. And also a quick question. I'm going to ask you a quick question. Municipalities, your water treatment plant, they're not designed to remove pharmaceuticals, correct?
Yeah, so basically a wastewater treatment plant, kind of how I call it, is an accelerated form of biology. What we do in a wastewater treatment plant naturally takes place in nature, like an outhouse or a septic tank. So we speed up the process. The two biggest things that we have to get out of the water is the contaminants, primarily nitrogen, nitrites, nitrates, and ammonia. If those go directly into the surface water supply, they can mess up the biology. They can cause algae outbreaks. They can cause the fish to die off because too much oxygen demand. They can cause all kinds of sorts of things. And so we depend on nature, two primary forms of bacteria, which are called nitrifiers, which break down the ammonia to nitrites and nitrites, and denitrifiers, which break down the nitrites and nitrates into nitrogen gas, carbon dioxide, and water. So those bugs that do the work have been around since the beginning of time, and their job is to help out on what's called the nitrogen cycle. Now, since the 1950s and until now, so just a quick history, in 1971 is approximately when EPA was started, everybody was dumping their wastewater directly in the rivers. And there's a famous story in Chicago where the river caught on fire multiple times because it was so contaminated. So there's been huge breakthroughs in discharging from wastewater treatment plants and from municipalities and making sure that the water's clean and safe for the aquatic life in rivers and streams. Now, beginning in the 1950s, there's been a huge introduction in pharmaceuticals and other types of chemicals that this biology does not know how to process. Most of that, a good percentage of that, depending upon what gets collected in the biosolids, does get discharged out into the streams. And so for me, it's just like, as far as we're meeting our quality of work, it's becoming higher and higher standards to make sure that the ammonia and nitrogen levels are down to a certain level, and that's usually we try to achieve like 5 to 10 milligrams per liter total inorganic nitrogen. In order for us to keep that, those standards are even coming up, and then we have other regulations that are coming up. But what's coming down the pike right now is like, how do we get the microplastics? How do we get the personal care products out? How do we get the pharmaceuticals out of the effluent, which is the name for the water that leaves into the rivers and streams out of the water?
So let me interrupt you right there, Mark, and appreciate your patience. That is a very important key because we've talked about different types of filtration. One of them that would be very effective would be, a commercial grade, reverse osmosis, the RO membrane, where reverse osmosis membranes are nanofiltration, so the pores are small enough that it can trap those contaminants, pharmaceuticals, out of the water supply, the PFAS of forever chemicals, even the microplastics. However, reverse osmosis membrane technology has to have a water softener or soft water for it to be effective. But then, Mark, you and I mentioned what, a couple of months ago I found very interesting is that because of the wastewater on a reverse osmosis system in a water treatment plant, where would that go? And in some cases, they're injecting that wastewater right back into the aquifer.
Yeah, that's a few things that you and I have kicked around a little bit is like there's no such thing as away. You don't throw something away. So if you want to take it to, like, okay, I have my trash in my house, I'm going to throw it away. No, it doesn't get thrown away. It gets put somewhere else. And so, okay, we have been able to remove all these chemicals that have been recently introduced in the wastewater in the last few decades. Where does it go? Does it go to landfill? Does it go to deep injection? And what are the side effects that are going to be done with that? I can't remember. I believe it's up at the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, and I'll have to double check, but they were cleaning up all the damage that was done to the soil during the manufacturing of explosives and bombs in the 1940s. And they were taking that water and they were injecting it underground. And what it was causing, it was creating a lot of earthquakes in Commerce City, so they had to stop that. And so there's not only like the concern of like, okay, we're going to be putting this underground. What's the chances of damaging the aquifers? Also, what could it do to the geology that's below our feet as well?
So one of the things that we have to consider is Mark is providing us some really good information, some really technical information. But one of the things that what this really boils down to is it's going to be up to us for the quality of drinking water. And that's where Water Pros comes in with the point of views for reverse osmosis. Mark, I want to take a little bit because I'm thinking also, I want to talk a little bit about the commercial side of the reverse osmosis. So reverse osmosis membranes, as I mentioned before, they're nanofiltration, so that 0.0001 micron. So when you're in nanofiltration, water has to be forced through the membrane. So a commercial RO system has a pump, and that pump pushes the water through the membrane so you can have a quicker production. Normally, let's just say a 1,400 gallon a day RO unit will produce 1 gallon of drinking water per minute, and it also will produce 1 gallon of wastewater. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. But the system has to operate in soft water because the reverse osmosis membranes, being nanofiltration, are not designed to operate in hard water. Now they can, and what will happen is hard water will coat that membrane, scratch the membrane, and you'll lose the nanofiltration part of it. Water will still flow through the membrane because of the pump. So the bottled water industry, for example, it got exposed for their manufacturing process. They bypass the water softener. They go directly to the membranes as the pre-filtration. I'm going to go to a dairy farm next week where they have this exact same setup. They have 300,000 gallons of water a day for their dairy cows, and they don't have pre-treatment. So I was talking to the gentleman over the phone, and this is exactly what's happening, and it's what happened in the bottled water industry. The first series of membranes collect all the hardness, and so the hardness is accumulated. Now, it's still filtering water. Well, not really, but it's still processing water because the pump is forcing it through. So then you get basically hard water build up on the membranes, and then the microplastics become even smaller because they bounce off the calcium. Or you think you're getting, chemical, removal. You're not, because those membranes are basically sacrificed because of hard water. So a water softener is absolutely essential when you're talking about, commercial reverse osmosis filtration. So if you pre-treat the water and you're allowing soft water to go through the reverse osmosis membranes, then those membranes can remove the pharmaceutical contamination, can remove the forever chemical contamination, can remove the radium and radon and uranium contamination, the fluoride contamination, because that's what they're designed to do. Reverse osmosis filtration systems are the ultimate when it comes to water filter. Now, an under the sink point of use RO unit that fits, in your home underneath the kitchen sink, that is fed by a 1/4-inch water line. So the 1/4-inch water line is under pressure from your municipality, so you don't have to have a pump, really. And so that basically filters at a lower rate. Because it's not having a pump forcing the water through, it can absorb hardness and not get damaged because of the fact that we're only using a quarter, inch line. So you're maybe going at a quarter gallon per minute, processing. So eventually you're under the sink reverse osmosis. That membrane's going to swell because of all the hardness contamination, and it'll simply stop producing water. So that's something that I just wanted to cover real quick. So when we go back to, on a grand scale, what Mark's talking about in water production, there's so much there that they have to take in consideration. So when you're pumping water through the membranes, what really, are we sacrificing quality? Mark, that's something that, I wonder, do people like that reverse osmosis plant in Aurora? Have you been able to go in there and check that out?
I have not. I've had several coworkers go to it, and we need a set of time to check that out. I'd be curious to find that out. Paul, you said one thing, kind of like one thing that's dawned in my mind is like, do you wax and polish your car before or after you wash it?
That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, if you wash your car after and you use that wax and polish, you're just going to just grind in that dirt that's on your car into the paint and scratch it up. And it's a similar thing of water treatment in it. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I have to admit I probably know about 10% of the knowledge that's out there. And the reason why is because this industry is so complicated. There's microbiology, there's chemistry, there's physics, there's electrical, there's engineering. And even if there's multiple different types of water treatment plants, multiple different types of wastewater treatment plants, those themselves have so many eccentric things about it, it takes time to learn it. And that's why it's really important to find the knowledgeable people out there who are compassionate and honest, who can give you the right information to make sure that you put a unit into your home that is economical, safe, and effective.
I always say that water treatment isn't plug and play. Okay, so we're up to our next break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about solutions to these problems that we're bringing up. Also, let's talk about why there's a bacteria outbreak in municipal water supply in the state of New York. So we'll come back after this. You're listening to Haystack Help Radio. This is Water Talk, and I'm Paul the Waterman.
Hey, Dan, our jobs are pretty different. I'm a baseball announcer. You're an attorney and a talk show host.
Yeah, but we do have something in common.
Really? What's that?
Our favorite car dealer, Len Lyle Chevrolet.
Yeah, definitely not your typical dealership.
That's so true, Jack. No high-pressure sales tactics. They respect your time. And when you have two jobs, that's important.
I'd recommend Len Lyle Chevrolet to anyone. And with their low overhead, that means
lower prices. Yeah, we really do have something in common.
Len Lyle Chevrolet. Go east and pay the least. Chevy, find new roads.
Every day, new reports warn us about microplastics and contaminants in our water. Are you sure your family's water is safe? Call Water Pros today for your complimentary in-home water test. Find out what's really in your water and how to fix it. And don't miss Water Talk every Friday at 12:30 with Paul the Waterman right here on KLZ 560. Call Water Pros now, 303-862-5554. That's 303-862-5554.
Turn a normal day into an adventure on an e-bike. Hi, I'm Randy Caranci, founder of E-Bike of Colorado. E-bikes are a fun way to ride around town. Just try it. Pedal assist technology flattens the steepest hills. We have 14 major brands to choose from, and our expert staff will find you the perfect bike. Come take a free test ride at E-Bike of Colorado in downtown Louisville next to the historic grain elevator. Open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Learn more at ebikeofcolorado.com. Just try it.
Need new glasses fast? With Stack Optical's on-site lab, you'll get your prescription glasses in just 3 to 4 days. No long wait times. Hey, this is Scott Watley, and I've trusted my eye care to Alan Stack and Stack Optical for the last 15 years. Eye exams are only $69, and that should be a part of your physical checkups each year. For over 50 years, Denver has trusted this family-owned boutique eye care center for premium vision care, custom eyewear, and expert repairs. See the Stack Optical difference today. Call 303-321-1578. That's 303-321-1578. 888 and tell them Scott sent you. Stack Optical. Since 1968, at Stack Optical, you'll see the difference.
This is 560 KLZ, your home station.
Welcome to Water Talk here on Haystack Help Radio. If you have a question for me and Mark, the studio number is 303-477-5600. We'd love to answer any questions you may have. So, Mark, what I was leading up to during the, just before a break, water treatment in water treatment plants has its limitations. And the reason why is simply because of the production that you have to provide. So there's only so much that can be done, correct?
It's in the hundreds of millions of gallons, more than that, millions of gallons a day in water treatment that takes place across the nation. I'm being very conservative with that number. And the biggest thing is just like it's volume. And there's a balance between quality and quantity, and there's a very delicate balance that we have to try to achieve. On the wastewater side, everyday operators are just trying to strive to make sure that they can just keep the requirements that are out there right now as far as the quality to upkeep with the quantity that's taking place. Summertime, wintertime. 3 times more during the summertime is used in water than is during the wintertime, and that's for irrigation. There's variance in the wastewater during the wintertime, but primarily it's on the water side of things. So it's a juggle to handle the volume. It's also a juggle to handle when things go down, when things go wrong. It's also a juggle on sometimes a water treatment plant will have to juggle multiple different sources of source water, which is the raw water, and changing their treatment on that based upon the quality of the source water.
So one of the things,
go ahead.
So one of the things that with bacteria, there's been news stories, especially in New York, where they've had bacteria outbreaks in the city of New York because of warm water conditions, but reason why I want to bring this up is you said something a while back that really surprised me. Chlorination doesn't kill the virus or bacteria, it sterilizes it. And that really shocked me. I was like, holy cow. And now I understand why municipalities like Denver add the ammonia to the chlorine, calling it a chloramine, because it's longer contact time, because it is sterilization, not 100% wiping or killing the bacteria and virus out. So that to me is really important for us to understand. And so when you have that type of issue occur, then in warm water, does that mean, Mark, that there's something failing in the New York water water treatment system, correct, for that to occur?
Yeah, Paul, this is new to me. I just quickly looked up this article during the commercial break. But a couple things I want to address. As far as the chlorine, chlorine is the best way to try to deliver the water, try to keep it as safe as we possibly can through the distribution system. And that distribution system is the name of the pipes that leave the water treatment plant to get to your house. Chlorine does not kill the bacteria. It prevents it from multiplying. And so there's a whole... We could talk I think we could put several shows together and talking about what the effects that it does to your biome in your stomach drinking chlorinated water. So also there is bacteria that is producing an ability to resist chlorine. So this article, I think is this the article you're talking about in the, I mispronounced it, Legionnaires' disease that took place?
That's it, yeah, Legionnaire disease, exactly correct, yep.
And I just, so going back, I'll address that, but going back, chlorine is the best policeman if everything goes smooth. From point A, water treatment plant, to point B, your house, your building. Now, there are factors that can play into changing the quality of water. If there is a line break, if the water gets infected, if there is a backflow, uncontrolled backflow situation, which I think, I'm just speculating right now, it seems like this came from cooling towers. And so the commercial buildings, if there is a chance that they can contaminate the water, and a backflow event is like the distribution system loses pressure, and the water can leave the factory or leave the building and flow back into the distribution system. That's called a cross connection. And I think they look like they said, I just was quickly reading and spending 20 seconds into it, it came from cooling towers. Now, I'm speculating probably what happened is the backflow preventers, which prevent the water from leaving those cooling towers, probably had failed, and then that's what caused the contamination in the distribution system, in combination of the water being warmer as well.
So speaking of the chlorination aspect, which it's one of those you have no choice to use it, but it also creates carcinogens in the drinking water. One of them I knew the EPA was screaming about in the 90s was trihalomethanes. And trihalomethanes is a part of the disinfection process. It's a byproduct. It's absorbed through our skin. It also is absorbed when you drink your glass of water. But it also is a cancer-causing agent. But it's there. It's something that because they sanitize the water. It's chlorination with organics in the water, and you're going to have organics in the water, will create trihalomethanes. And so, that's something that we, have to take in consideration. And because chlorination is a sterilizer and doesn't kill, that's why you have, issues, Texas and Florida, for example, recently, where brain-eating amoeba, got into, consumers, through them using a nasal rinse, they use their tap water, and they got a brain-eating amoeba, and in both cases it turned fatal. So that's when you go to a doctor and they tell you to do a nasal rinse, now they tell you to use distilled water or reverse osmosis water. But folks, I'm also beginning to think that a whole house reverse osmosis, but I was going to also say an ultraviolet light as well is something that absolutely has to happen. Whole house reverse osmosis units will remove, all the contaminants that we don't want. It's going to remove the pharmaceuticals. It'll absolutely remove the forever chemicals. You want to support a whole house reverse osmosis with an ultraviolet light, because ultraviolet light will, as the same as chlorination, will sterilize the bacteria and the bacteria will die. Ultraviolet lights you have to set up at a high flow rate in the Joule rating, so you know that it's strong enough to zap the bug or the virus. And so that's something that I use in my home, ultraviolet light filtration with reverse osmosis supported by the water softener, because I do nasal rinses because of I have chronic sinusitis. So it's something that you just can't take a chance. Mark, let me ask you this question: how long have you guys used the chloramine? Did you guys, wasn't that just switched over from like in the 2015? Is that when everybody switched to the chloramine?
We don't use chloramines. I believe Aurora uses chlorines, and I believe Denver Water uses chloramines. And a couple things I wanted to hit on that. There's one thing that's called chlorine demand, and so the chlorine demand is just like the more contaminated the water, the more gunk it has in the water, the more chlorine it's going to be required to use to remove those or disinfect those items that are in there. Another thing is like as the water gets warmer, its ability to retain that chlorine residual in it drastically decreases. And so if you have an event where there is a contamination, a bacterial contamination, plus it's warm, theoretically the chlorine that's in the water can quickly dissipate. and there's no more policemen out there to watch things. And then, your other point on you're talking about the monochloramation, and that's the treatment of both the combination of chlorine and ammonia. And the idea of chlorination and ammonia is to give it a longer retention time, a longer residence time it has in the water. And it's a catch-22 as far as, like, do you hire a corrupt cop or do you hire a gang member to protect your house? So,
that's not, oh my goodness.
So it's just like, there are side effects with monochloramation. The plus, it hangs out there longer. It can protect your neighborhood for a better time. But the bad effects, you're going to have to bribe it because it has cancer-causing qualities behind it. Free chlorine, it doesn't have the cancer-causing qualities that we are aware of it now, but it doesn't hang out that long.
So I have a question for you. I have a question for you, Mark. Sorry for interrupting you. Chlorine is an oxidizer. So chlorine, if you have ferrous iron in the water and, they're injecting it with chlorine as a sanitizer, with that ferrous iron, it converts that ferrous iron to ferrite, it oxidizes it, and it becomes a solid. When that occurs, so then what that means is that then the water, loses its punch to zap the bacteria and the viruses, correct?
Exactly. So typically when, we have, let's say you got a little bit of 500 milliliters of water in a beaker. It has 1 milligram of iron in it and X amount of E. coli count or bug count in it, bacteria count in it. The first thing that chlorine is going to do is go after the inorganics. And then there's that we were talking about, that chlorine demand. It'll go down and oxidize that iron and cause that iron to precipitate, meaning falling down to the bottom of the beaker. And then if there's any chlorine left after it's done the oxidation of the iron in it, then it'll start breaking down the bacteria. So that's why it's really important is that in a water treatment plant, they try to get everything out of the water that they possibly can. So the chlorine's only job is to hang out as the policeman in case there's the bacteria contamination that takes place in the distribution system.
So what that means, folks, is that if you live in a neighborhood and you can smell, when you turn your faucet on and it smells like a swimming pool, that's by design, because they went ahead and did their water analysis, and they have to have that amount of chlorine content because they know that it's going to oxidize iron. So I know there's neighborhoods out there where, and I've been to them, where you take the lid off, live in town at city water, you take the lid off the back of the toilet tank. And if you see orange staining back there, that's iron content that was oxidized by the chlorination process. So they have to have an additional level of chloramine, because the Denver metro area uses a chloramine, to basically zap that bug. So, Mark, we're going to take our last time out, and then when we come back, we're going to continue on this topic. Thank you. You're listening to Haystack Help Radio Water Talk, KLZ.
Here's why you need personal injury attorney Kevin Flesh on your side. He understands the way the jury thinks. In the context of a personal injury case, you've been hurt by someone else's negligence. The idea is that you're going to try to recover so that you can get back to where you were just prior to that incident occurring. What that really means from a jurist perspective is that you're going to be asking them to award you money. So when we talk about fairness, we're talking about 6 people that you don't know. Those 6 people view the evidence and make a unanimous decision that will decide what the fair value is. When you're the one who's hurt, you have a good idea of what you think it's worth. The question is, can you persuade those other individuals whom you don't know and were witnesses to believe that's what the case is worth? Kevin Flesh understands the way the jury thinks. Call now for a free consultation, 303-806-8886.
Now that the summer heat is on with temperatures in the 80s and 90s, it's easy to forget that our pets can't cool off by changing into shorts and t-shirts like we do. Pets wear fur year-round and are limited in how well they can cool their bodies. It doesn't take long for them to overheat and get in serious trouble with hypothermia or heat stroke. Hey, this is Scott Watley, and every summer we hear sad stories about pets being left in cars or out in the hot sun and the tragic outcome that follows. The team at Lone Tree Veterinary Medical Center wants your pets to be safe this summer and have a few tips that can help. Be sure your pet always has access to fresh water both indoors and outdoors. Limit your pet's outdoor walks, hikes, and other outdoor activities to early morning and evening hours when it's cooler. Bring plenty of water along for your pet. Keep pets inside during the day where air conditioning or fans keep it cooler. Make sure your pet has a shaded area if out in the yard. And never, never leave your pet in a parked car, even for a quick errand. Temperatures in a car can rise to dangerous levels within minutes, even if shaded and the windows are open. For more information on hot weather safety, check out the Stay Cool Avoiding Hypothermia in Pets blog at LoneTreeVet.com. For more information about the many wonderful services at their facility, just give them a call at 303-708-8050. That's 303-708-8050. Lone Tree Veterinary Medical Center. It's the place where my pets go.
You're listening to 560 KLZ, your home station.
Welcome to Water Talk on Haystack Help Radio. I'm Paul the Waterman. Okay, Mark, so let's get back right at it because I think we brought something up that's really, really important. The chlorination process. So when chlorine is absorbed by ferrous iron, and it's basically the ferrous iron then is oxidized, so chlorine is an oxidizer, then the amount of sanitizing power is diminished. And so that I've been to many people's homes where the chlorine content is almost 2 to 3 part per million. Some places up north, Mark, is as high as 3 part per million. So that basically tells me there's enough contaminant in that water that they want to make sure that they have enough, chlorine content to basically zap it out.
Yeah, the maximum contaminant level that's regulated is 4 milligrams per liter. And so sometimes, other water treatment plants, depending upon the source of how far you're taking that test from in a location of the water treatment plant, they may have to boost the chlorine at a higher level to ensure that it reaches the minimum requirement of chlorine at the very ends of the distribution system. So that's a factor that plays into it as well. For a plant operator, I don't really look at it so much as far as what's the inorganics that's in the water. My goal is to make sure at the very ends of the lines, the very ends of the distribution system, there is a residual chlorine in there that's out there to try to do its job.
So that's
the demand for iron is about 1 to 1. It's about 1.3. I believe it's 1.3 milligrams per liter of chlorine for 1 milligram a liter of iron that's in the water.
So that's important, folks. So their main purpose is not they're not going to care about the quality of iron that's in the water. They're going to care about, are they sending enough total chlorine content that's going to zap the viruses and bacteria in the water. That's where, I've always said, water filtration, the quality of our water is truly up to us. I found also, to share with you, Mark, that with those that use the chloramine, because it doesn't dissipate, levels of total chlorine content, including the chloramine, build up in a conventional hot water heater, where you'll have higher levels of chlorine in a hot water heater than's coming out of the cold water tap. Just FYI. I think that's a concern because the higher levels that you have, that chloramine is converted to a steam, and we're breathing that in the shower. So that's something that, I definitely want to point out to folks. Also, if you live in a municipality where you see the orange and rust color, you absolutely can remove that, and that's where we offer, the Water Pros Kenai Echo Pro Max, our matrix unit, where it has a multimedia system that will remove the forever chemicals, the total chlorine content, the hardness, and the iron content. But Mark, the last 8 minutes or so we have, I'm becoming a big fan of people considering whole house reverse osmosis units, because it's going to be able to take everything, including pharmaceuticals, out of the drinking water supply at every single faucet. My concern, Mark, is we don't know, they haven't tested for, and I'm sure it's an unregulated contaminant, but we truly don't know what levels of pharmaceuticals we have in our water supply, do we?
There are thousands of pharmaceuticals out there. I think that one of the biggest wake-up calls when it came to pharmaceuticals is when they did the test downstream of Denver Metro Wastewater, and they found the level of birth control that was in the discharge of the wastewater treatment plant and how it affected the fish. For every 10 suckers they were testing, 9 of them were female, and then the 9th one was a hermaphrodite. And I think 1 was male. So that's just one of the thousands of chemicals that are out there. And they haven't even started reaching, a lot of the pharmaceuticals that are in the water haven't even reached the stage what we talked about earlier as emerging contaminants. So, and then there's a whole years of studies that have to be done and different types of filtrations that have to be done. Now, kind of, just let the listeners know, I'm a volunteer on this thing. I'm a very concerned citizen, and I care about the humanity, and so, but the answers are not going to come from us. We, as water plant operators, have our hands full, and I mean, each episode I always do a recruiting call. We are in need of help of water plant and wastewater plant operators. There's our age median is about 50 right now. And for people who are looking at, getting into something that is very rewarding and can help the world, by all means, get in the water and wastewater treatment side of things. But the answer is going to come from you. It's going to come from you as the listeners to get involved, to reach out to your local communities and see what you can do to help, get educated, and take a proactive approach and learn about what you can do to protect your family first.
Yeah,
and I would be looking at,
I totally agree. There's a lot of information. Everything that we cover on this show is you can find online. There are YouTube videos that will educate you, especially the forever chemical contamination. Mark, 15 years ago, the AP did stories that are on YouTube videos. The AP did stories regarding pharmaceutical contamination. NBC Nightly News, there's a YouTube video that you can look at. It's about 15 years old, doing stories about pharmaceuticals in our drinking water. And then all of a sudden they disappear. They're done. Nobody's reporting on them anymore. And I can't help but think because they don't want us to know the truth. And that too is just like, we have to understand, and the news puts out headlines there to make money, and two, they just didn't get the reaction out there that they probably should have gotten the reaction out, because citizens need to stand up and say enough is enough. I agree with you. I agree. They have to get involved. Listen, we need people out there that's listening. We need people to get into Mark's industry. We need fresh minds. We need folks to come up with solutions. So real quick, Mark, the volume of water that has to be produced right now, the recommended technologies to filter the forever chemicals out of the water, just the forever chemicals out of the water, one of them is aniline resin. The other one is activated carbon or reverse osmosis membrane. Well, an aniline resin system or an activated carbon system would have to be in its own building. I mean, it would have to be a 3-story building that was full of filter media to handle the volume, because with the flow rates, Mark, what's an average flow rate that you guys produce servicing water to customers?
Each resident uses per house, I guess we call it taps, and that's a house. I'd say your average family, maybe 2 to 3 people, 2 to 4 people, uses about 133 gallons of water a day just for domestic purposes, just for potable use. And now, again, like we were saying earlier, that number usually triples on the water side of things during the summertime for irrigation.
So the flow rate would have to be, that you guys produce, has to be in the hundreds of thousands of gallons per minute, correct, to reach out to municipality?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So because of that, my point is at 100,000 of gallons a minute flow rate, there's not a filtration system designed where the media wouldn't be crushed. So you would have to, basically make water a batch at a time. And that's something that, that's where we have to get together, and nobody's talking about it. I don't see anybody on a ballot initiative coming up in November, Mark, that's talking about updating water filtration in a municipal water plant.
And some of that technology is out there, but it's cost prohibitive. I don't know what you pay for 1,000 gallons for your water. I think it's around $4 to $7 per gallon on it. The cost of that would expeditely go up. We're looking at maybe $100 per 1,000 gallons if we wanted to completely filter everything that can get filtered out of the water with the technology that's out there. The two biggest expenses: the cost of infrastructure that you mentioned, and the cost of electricity. It costs a lot of money to run those pumps into a micro or reverse osmosis type of system. That like you said earlier, both you and I are reaching out for young people out there to come up with methods to make this happen.
Absolutely, we have to. So what we need to do is get our leaders. In the last minute, we have to get our leaders to basically offer, tax breaks for whole house, drinking water filtration systems, as they do for an e-bike. As they were doing, it's going to go away for the electric vehicle. Mark, listen, I want to thank you very much for taking your time and being with us today. I appreciate it, sir.
Absolutely. And I think the best thing I'll emphasize again, if you want to learn about technology, reach out to Paul, have him put in one of those units and learn how the reverse osmosis system is, how it works, and then maybe you can come up with some ideas that even can work better than what's out there.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Scott for letting us be here today. Scott, thank you. Have safe travels, and we'll look forward to you being back on Monday. This is Haystack Radio Water Talk, and everybody have a blessed weekend. Thanks, guys.
The views and opinions expressed on KLZ 560 are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect those of Crawford Broadcasting, the station, management, employees, associates, or advertisers. KLZ 560 is a Crawford Broadcasting God and Country station.